Hey all, let me preface this by saying that I'm not here to dunk on anyone. I just want to explain the math and how, if we could mobilize the entire gun owning population of California, we could change the political calculus in Sacramento. Now then, there are at least 1.2 million gun owners in California who are registered as Democrats. And if national voting patterns hold true, most of them are voting for the same California politicians who have demonstrated time and time again that they are no friends to our Second Amendment rights. Today, I'm going to walk you through the actual numbers and show you something that might make some of you a little uncomfortable. Gun owners in California have more power than you think, and a lot of them just aren't using it. Now, let's talk about the math that California politicians really hope you never do. California has at least 4.2 million documented gun owners. That number comes from a 2018 UC Davis study, but, and this is important, that number is almost certainly low. Here's why. It doesn't account for anyone who bought firearms before 2014 when long gun registration went into effect, and then hasn't purchased anything since. That could be millions of people who inherited firearms, bought guns in the 90s or 2000s, and simply haven't felt the need to buy any more. The real number could be 6 million, could be 8 million. We simply don't know because there's no complete data. But let's use the conservative estimate of 4.2 million. If anything, that makes the math more compelling. Even with the lowest defensible number, gun owners have enormous political power. Between 2020 and 2021 alone, California had massive gun sales. 1.26 million guns sold in 2020. About 370,000 first-time buyers. So that 4.2 million baseline is definitely growing. UC Davis broke down California gun owners by political affiliation. 38% Republican, 1.6 million. 28% Democrat, 1.2 million. 27% no party preference, 1.1 million. And 7% other. More than half of California's gun owners are not Republicans. Now, here's the national data on how gun owners actually vote. In the 2018 midterms, 61% of gun-owning households voted Republican and 36% voted Democrat. Notice something? Those percentages are pretty close to the party registration breakdown. Gun owners are voting, they're just politically divided, which means roughly 1.2 million California gun owners are voting for the politicians who explicitly want to restrict gun rights. Maybe they really don't know, maybe they're not paying attention. Regardless, they're making a choice. Let's look at what happened in 2022. Gavin Newsom beat Bruen by 59.2% to 40.8%. About 13 million votes were cast in total. Newsom's margin of victory, roughly 2.4 million votes. 1.2 million gun owners registered Democrat in California. Now think about that number for a second. Gavin Newsom won re-election by 2.4 million votes. That means if just 1 in 5 of those Democrat gun owners made gun rights a priority in the voting booth, just 240,000 people, that's a 480,000 vote swing. You wouldn't flip the race overnight, but you'd cut Newsom's margin by 20%. And more importantly than that, you'd send a message that Sacramento politicians can't ignore. Here's the real math that matters. California Democrats have a supermajority. They don't need a single Republican vote to pass any gun control law that they want. The only thing that would make them moderate on guns is if they thought it would cost them elections. Right now, they don't think that. And why would they? They know most Democratic gun owners will keep voting for them anyway. But as long as Democratic gun owners stay silent and keep voting the party line no matter what they do on guns, Sacramento has zero incentive to change. You're telling them, do whatever you want on the Second Amendment, it doesn't matter to us. You don't have to change parties, but you need to start making some noise. Because right now, the anti-gun movement thinks they own you. And they're probably right. Before we get into what California politicians say, I want to show you something important. The anti-gun movement has been very open about their ultimate goals and their strategy for getting there. Pete Shields founded the organization that became the Brady Campaign. In 1976, in a New Yorker interview, he laid out a 3-step plan, and I quote, "The first problem is to slow down the increasing number of handguns being produced and sold in this country. The second is to get handguns registered, and the final problem is to make the possession of all handguns and all handgun ammunition except for the military, policemen, licensed security guards, licensed sporting clubs, and licensed collectors totally illegal." That's not me interpreting, that's the founder of the Brady Campaign saying the goal is to make normal civilian handgun ownership essentially illegal. Now, Josh Sugarman, he founded the Violence Policy Center and literally wrote a book titled Every Handgun is Aimed at You, The Case for Banning Handguns. In 1988, he explained the strategy for banning so-called assault weapons. The weapons' menacing looks, coupled with the public's confusion over fully automatic machine guns versus semi-automatic assault weapons, anything that looks like a machine gun is assumed to be a machine gun, can only increase the chance of public support for restrictions on these weapons. He's saying the quiet part out loud. Use public confusion to ban guns that look scary, even though they function the same as other semi-automatic rifles. The strategy has always been ban the scary-looking ones first, use that success to justify banning more, and then repeat until you've achieved the ultimate goal. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is what they've said they're doing on multiple occasions. Now let's talk about what California politicians say. We'll start with Gavin Newsom. When the Supreme Court ruled in Bruen that states can't make you prove special need to exercise your Second Amendment rights, Newsom called it a very bad ruling and immediately started working on ways to circumvent it. At the press conference announcing Senate Bill 2, California's response, Newsom literally made air quotes with his fingers when saying the word right to carry firearms. This was also mentioned in the federal court opinion written by Judge Cormac Carney. Newsom used air quotes when discussing the right to carry firearms outside the home, making his contempt for the Constitution clear. Newsom also said, the Second Amendment is not a regulatory straitjacket, we must protect our communities. And then he proposed a 28th Amendment that would ban civilian ownership of so-called assault weapons, which is a made-up term with an ever-shifting definition and deserves its own video. I'll get to that. Raise purchase age to 21, mandate waiting periods, and require universal background checks. And now let's talk about Senator Dianne Feinstein. She represented California for 30 years. Her famous 1995 quote on 60 Minutes, and I want to be accurate about the context, she was asked about the fact that her 1994 assault weapons ban only banned future sales, not existing guns. And here's what she said. If I could have gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, I would have done it. And I could not do that. To be clear, she was talking about assault weapons specifically, not all guns. But what she's describing is confiscation, not just banning future sales, but collecting the ones that people already own. That same year in December, she said on the Senate floor, if I had my way, I would ban the possession of assault weapons anywhere in the United States of America, but there were not going to be the votes for that. She also said, the National Guard fulfills the militia mentioned in the Second Amendment. Citizens no longer need to protect the states or themselves. As well as, banning guns addresses a fundamental right of all Americans to feel safe. She didn't believe in the individual right of self-defense, or the founders' original intent for the Second Amendment. Now here's what makes this really hard to change. California has a Democratic supermajority in both houses of the state legislature. What that means is Democrats can pass any law without a single Republican vote. They can override governor vetoes, they control every committee and every chairmanship, and they don't need to compromise. They don't need moderates, they don't need to worry about gun owners as voters. After the Supreme Court's Bruen decision, California passed SB 2, which created 26 categories of sensitive places where you can't carry. All parks, playgrounds, libraries, museums, all public transportation, all hospitals, all bars and restaurants that serve alcohol, and any private business unless they explicitly post a sign allowing firearms. Judge Cormac Carney blocked most of these and wrote, SB 2 turns nearly every public place in California into a sensitive place, effectively abolishing the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. California's coverage is sweeping, repugnant to the Second Amendment, and openly defiant of the Supreme Court. Every single California Democrat in the state legislature voted for SB 2. The court strike down a law, they pass a new one designed to get around the ruling, then repeat. And they can do this because they have that supermajority, and gun owners, including the 1.2 million registered Democrats, keep giving them that supermajority. Now I have to tell you this story because it perfectly captures the hypocrisy. California State Senator Leland Yee was one of the most vocal anti-gun politicians in the state. He authored multiple gun control bills, he received awards from the Brady campaign, and after Sandy Hook, he pushed to ban the bullet button, which some of you younger guys might not remember those. He told CBS, "It is extremely important that individuals in the state of California do not own assault weapons. I mean, that is just so crystal clear, there is no debate, no discussion." And then, in March of 2014, the FBI arrested him for international arms trafficking. He was arranging to import fully automatic weapons and shoulder-fired missiles from Islamic separatists in the Philippines. Not AR-15s, military-grade automatic weapons, and anti-aircraft missiles. He wanted to facilitate a deal worth up to $2.5 million in illegal weapons, all in exchange for campaign donations. He pleaded guilty to racketeering in 2015, and he was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison in 2016. The judge called his actions vile and hypocritical. So, California gun owner wants a 15-round magazine? Criminal. California state senator wants to import missiles from terrorists? Just needs better fundraising. So if you're a gun owner who votes Democrat, I want you to understand what you're choosing. The Brady campaign, whose founder said the goal was to make handgun ownership totally illegal. The Violence Policy Center, whose founder literally wrote a book called The Case for Banning Handguns. Gavin Newsom, who makes air quotes about your constitutional rights. Dianne Feinstein, who wanted to confiscate essentially all semi-automatic rifles if she could get the votes. They've told us the plan. Ban the scary-looking guns first. Register everything. Use that to ban and confiscate more. Repeat. When you vote for California Democrats at the state level, you are enabling politicians who view your gun ownership as a problem to solve, not a right to respect. Now let's go back to that 1.2 million Democratic gun owners figure. If just half, 600,000 people, decided gun rights matter enough to vote differently in state elections, that's a 1.2 million vote swing. That wouldn't flip the governor's race overnight, but it would cut the margin by 50% and make races competitive, force Democrats to actually listen to gun owners, flip some state legislature seats, and completely change the political calculus in California. You don't need all gun owners to vote together, you just need enough to make politicians nervous. Right now, they're not nervous, because they know most gun owners are politically divided and will keep voting their party regardless. But what if that changed? Suddenly Sacramento has to pay attention. Suddenly you're not a problem to solve, you're a constituency to court. The power is already there, it's just not being used. Now here's the only good news. The federal courts are actually defending gun rights. Since Bruen in 2022, the Ninth Circuit struck down California's open carry ban in January 2026, but it remains to be seen how that will fully play out. Multiple assault weapons bans are under serious legal challenge. Magazine capacity restrictions are being fought, and sensitive places laws have been getting blocked. And this is where the real battle is for now. Not in Sacramento, but in federal courtrooms. Firearms Policy Coalition, Second Amendment Foundation, CalGuns Foundation, they're doing the real work and they're winning in court. If you care about gun rights in California, those organizations deserve your support. Because the courts might save us. As of now, the legislature won't. So here's where we are. At least 1.2 million California gun owners are registered Democrats. Probably more if we count all the pre-2014 gun owners who aren't in any database. If national voting patterns hold, most of them voted for Gavin Newsom, who, no matter what he said on the Sean Ryan show, has demonstrated nothing but contempt for the Second Amendment. They voted for the supermajority that passes laws that a federal judge calls openly defiant of the Supreme Court. But understand what the anti-gun side has told us they want. Pete Shields, make handgun ownership totally illegal. Josh Sugarman, ban handguns. Use public confusion about assault weapons to do it incrementally. The plan has always been, take what you can now, come back for more later. The math says this could change. Just 600,000 people switching their vote would transform California politics. But it probably won't happen. Because most people vote with their party, not their gun rights. I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm just asking you to understand the trade that you're making. Because the politicians you're electing have already told us their ultimate goal. Effectively civilian disarmament outside highly regulated hobbyists limited to the most mundane firearms. They're not hiding it. The only question is, do you care enough to do something about it? Well, I know that was all a bit grim, but if you found this helpful or informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can also support the channel on Patreon. We have a Discord server and I am chronically online. Also, let me know in the comments what you think the best way to convince more gun owners to get involved in protecting our Second Amendment rights is. As always, I've been the 2A Tactical Dad, And as I like to say, we could all be a little more free and a lot more self-reliant. All it takes is a little responsibility.